Greetings YouTube, welcome back to the MetaNerd channel. I am Marcus, bringing you another video for Cardfight Vanguard Overdress. In this video, we will be talking about one of the core mechanics that each and every nation within the Overdress will have, which is the Overtrigger. Now, Overtrigger as a mechanic, I guess sparked some of the complaints from the community. Some hate them, some love them, but in my opinion, it's kinda balance out whatever cancerous mechanic in the premium format, I guess, but that's just me. Anyways, for the Overtrigger mechanic, as a summary, you can only run one Overtrigger in the whole deck, which means that out of 50 cards in your deck, you can only run one Overtrigger in the whole deck, which will lead to the consistency issue of you hitting the Overtrigger. Like normal trigger, of course, this Overtrigger will be giving one unit 100 million power when drive check or damage check. So 100 million power is ridiculous, and up until now there is no possible way for you to even get this kind of number, even for Dimension Police. So after you damage check or drive check into this Overtrigger, you are then required to bind the Overtrigger card and draw one card in place of that card. So you are able to activate an additional effect depending on which Overtrigger you are running when you are drive check. If you damage check, it's basically a 5th heal, since when you damage check this card, it binds itself and it does not state that you will need to put another card into your damage zone. So it's basically a 5th heal in the deck. All in all, the Overtrigger works offensively as well as defensively. At the time of the recording for this video, we have a total of 6 Overtriggers. Let's move on to them and see how they actually function. First, of course, we have everyone's favorite Overtrigger, which existed in every single starter deck, the Spiritual King of Determination, Olbaria. Of course, this is an Overtrigger. Once you actually drive check or damage check into this card, you are required to remove that card. I think I said bind, but then it's essentially the same thing, almost the same thing. You draw one card and choose one unit to get 100 million power until the end of turn. And if you do drive check this card, you can therefore activate the additional skill, which is choose another unit and it gets 100 million power until the end of turn. So basically you're able to choose 2 units and they will get 100 million power. Of course, this is during the drive check. The damage check, you can only choose one. Or you have the option to choose one unit to gain 200 million power, but I don't think you want that. But it is still an option. So all in all, not really the best out there, but this can see some plays actually. Moving on to Dragon Empire's own Overtrigger, we have Dragon Deity King of Resurgence, Dragveda. So as usual, this is an Overtrigger. The 100 million power stays the same. The additional effect on this is you choose one of your Vanguard and stand it, giving whatever your Vanguard is an Overlord card. This does not actually limit to when you are grade 3, only then you're able to activate a skill. No, if you drive check this card during your grade 1 or grade 2, you are able to restand them and therefore attack another time with a 100 million power Vanguard. Yeah. Of course, any skill that your Vanguard has that is activated when the Vanguard attacks can also be activated as long as it's not once per turn. And of course, you do have enough resources for that. Now, as we come to talk about the basic synergy towards the 2 existing deck that we have for Dragon Empire, I would say for Nirvana, it's actually a win for Nirvana, because if you do drive check this on the Nirvana turn, you are able to pay another counterblast to give all your Overdress unit 10k power. And what's more, the first time you activate Nirvana skill, the power actually stacks, which means if you do not give the 100 million power to Nirvana, the second time Nirvana attacks, Nirvana is gonna hit for 33k, because since the power actually stacks and it says until the end of turn, and of course your Overdress unit, your Virenars, are gonna hit for very, very big numbers. For Eugene, unfortunately, it's just a so-so. Even though if you restand Eugene, he does not really do anything in the battle phase. So I guess it's still a so-so, because most of his skill is based around the main phase. It means you will get your big plays in the main phase instead of the battle phase. Next, we have the Dark States Overtrigger, Hades Dragon Deity of Resentment. I'm not gonna pronounce that name. So the additional effect that we have for this Overtrigger is that during your turn, all your Vanguard gets 10k power and 1 crit until the end of this fight. So until the end of this fight, if you do drive check this card, you're able to get a Force 1 and Force 2 on the Vanguard permanently. Not really the most exciting skill, but then if you do drive check this in the early game, it's gonna end the game really fast. However, this one kind of drops in value the later you dry check this card, but then it's still a 10k and a crit, so it's still quite devastating for your opponent. As for the synergy between the two Dark States deck that we have, unfortunately, even though I would really want to put a win here, however, I'm gonna put at situational. The reason why I put situational in these two decks is because of the whole mechanic of them playing their own mechanic. Both of these decks requires you to soul charge a lot of cards and therefore decreasing the consistency of you drive checking into the Overtrigger for Dark States. And what's more, there comes a time where you actually accidentally soul charge the Overtrigger into your soul, which therefore not letting you activate the Overtrigger skill. So yeah, that's the main issue I have for the Overtrigger currently for the Dark States. It's a bit sad, but there's nothing really much I can really do about this. Next, we have the Cater Sanctuary Overtrigger, Light Dragon Deity of Honors, Amartinoa. Basically what this does is the additional effect. Until the end of turn, you also perform drive check for the battles your rearguards attack. So for every single time your rearguards attack, they're gonna get a drive check. Of course, if your rearguard is a grade 3, they do perform Twin Drive since they do have the skill Twin Drive on them. Very scary skill if you do manage to drive check, and almost certainly guarantee you the win if you do drive check into this card. And since the two decks that we currently have is gonna hit for really big numbers in Cater Sanctuary, this one, of course, for this two deck, it's definitely going to be a win. First of all, I guess, is that you can actually play the Hexar Orb units that actually let you stack the top deck in both of this deck. Actually, you can run the Pentagleam Sorceress on both Bastion as well as Hexar Orb, and therefore it will actually increase your consistency in drive checking into this Overtrigger, and therefore increasing the chances of you winning the game. Overall, this Overtrigger is just devastating, and with Bastion actually attacking you with 4 times, it's going to be very scary. Since both rearguards are gonna twin drive, there is no way you will see a Bastion without 2 great trees in the front row. For Hexar Orb, although it's only 3 attacks, the power boost of this unit is just gonna skyrocket. Next, we have Stoicheia, Source Dragon Deity of Blessing, Blessfavor. So the additional effect, it's actually quite long, so bear with me. First, you draw a card so which means that if you drive check into this Overtrigger, you actually draw 2. Choose one of your unit and it gains critical +1 until the end of turn. All your front row units get 10k power. If your damage zone has more cards than your opponents, choose a card from your damage zone and heal it. So basically what this does is a combination of all 4 triggers: the heal trigger, the draw trigger, the critical trigger, as well as the front trigger. There's a chance where you can actually not activate the heal part because you really do not know when you're gonna drive check into this card. But overall, if you did heal, it's gonna put you in a slight advantage because you therefore lower yourself into a much better position, as well as having a devastating rearguard attacks, as well as 1 unit hitting for 2 crit. So as for the synergy between the two decks that we have for Stoicheia, I would say it's definitely going to be a win for both of this deck, because both of this deck, although Magnolia does not really gain the power boost in the back row, but you have to take into account that it's not every single time all 3 of your back row is gonna attack, because Magnolia does restrict you into persona riding in order to allow all 3 of your back rows to attack. I guess it's kind of balanced out. If this Overtrigger does give power to the back row, it's gonna be too overpowered, and it might just put Magnolia as the best deck in the format. As for Zorga, the Overtrigger does provide him with more counterblast, because I think Zorga is gonna eat up a lot of counterblast. It does give you 1 extra counterblast if you do take the damage from your opponent, as well as the front row of Zorga is gonna hit for very high numbers. This card, with the addition of this card, is just gonna be even more insane. And of course, since it's a Grand Blue playstyle, the longer you drag the game against Zorga, the worse of a situation that you will be in. Lastly, we have the Gate Overtrigger, Star Dragon Deity of Infinitude, Eldobreath. The additional effect states that double the power and critical of all your front row units until the end of turn. Increase to double its power and critical when activated. So basically, this one lets your front row have a critical front trigger. Well, with the exception of the power being double. And of course, since you're able to give one unit 100 million power, if you then activate the additional effect, that rearguard is gonna hit for 200 million power. So even if your opponent gets a defensive overtrigger, you get what I mean. For the synergy between the two decks we have for Gate, definitely this will be a win. For Seraph Snow, because of the triple drive, you can actually see them get more consistency in drive checking into the Overtrigger. Since it's triple drive, any drive that you get is very important currently in the format. And of course, for Orphis, the tokens are hitting for bigger numbers already. So if you do drive check into this Overtrigger, those tokens are gonna hit for 2 damage each. And with this, does not take into account of the first critical trigger that of your first drive. So as we know, we get twin drive for every single time the grade 3 Vanguard attacks. If you do get a first trigger being critical trigger and then drive check into Overtrigger, one of your rearguard is gonna hit for 4 crits if you give that critical trigger to that particular rearguard. So it's insane. It's very, very insane. I'm gonna do something really fun, is that I will personally rank these triggers in terms of which are actually the best Overtrigger and which are the worst Overtrigger that we currently have in the whole format of Overdress. I will base on these 3 criteria. First is the consistency. Second, of course, is the synergy. And lastly, of course, the utility. So in first place, I guess by now you should know which of the Overtrigger will be the first place for me in this ranking. It will definitely be the Cater Sanctuary one. Since you have a lot of cards that actually help you checking the top deck, it is inevitable that you are going to check into this card on the top deck and therefore increasing the consistency throughout the whole game. As compared to the other nations does not have any ways of increasing the consistency in dry checking into Overtrigger. So Cater Sanctuary gets the first place due to how high the consistency is, as well as the synergy for Hexa Orb and Bastion, as well as the utility in letting the rearguards having drive check, which is very, very insane, which almost certainly guaranteed your opponents losing that game. In second place, we have Gate. Gate, I put this in second place, is because of Seraph Snow increasing the consistency in drive checking. Although it's still kind of RNG, it does not really increase the consistency in drive checking into this Overtrigger as compared to Cater Sanctuary, but a increase in consistency, even a slighter bit, is a win in my book. Also, of course, in terms of synergy, Seraph Snow does not have a very threatening turn, because most of their rearguards does not really gain power, and of course with this doubling their power is going to be really, really great. And the double crit is very, very good for Orphis. So yeah, that's the synergy there as well as the utility there. In third place, we have Stoicheia. Now Stoicheia ranks below Gate is because of course the consistency does not really match Cater Sanctuary and Gate, and you can't really activate the heal that often because you're gonna rely on RNG to actually drive check into this card. So the heal part is kind of what makes this card not move up in the rank a little bit. Utility wise, it's not especially great. It just provide more power to the front row. I would say it's still quite good, but even so, it's not gonna be as good as the other two. In fourth place, we have Dragon Empire. Dragon Empire's consistency is almost the same as Stoicheia. Synergy wise, only Nirvana is gonna benefit from this Overtrigger, because Eugene does not really benefit from this Overtrigger, so it's kind of not great. I wouldn't say it's bad. I would say not really great as compared to the other three. And then for utility, not really much utility for this card. I mean, it's just a restand. That's it. In fifth place, of course, I think by now you're wondering why is there a fifth and a sixth. Of course, I do include the Olbaria, which is the starter deck's Overtrigger. Now, of course, the last place goes to Dark Stage, which pains me a little bit. Why I put Olbaria in the fifth place and not in the sixth is because Olbaria actually has its own uses, because you can actually choose 2 units to gain 100 million power. If those units have a on-hit skill, there's a chance that they actually hit your opponent's Vanguard or Rearguard to activate their own skill. So this kind of makes it really, really good for some matchup or some deck that actually has a lot of on-hit skill. And of course, if you do dry check into this, for utility wise, every single nation is able to use this card, which means you do need to kind of like be ready, because not every time that nation will run its own specific Overtrigger. And of course, Dark States come at last place is because of the terrible consistency I have mentioned when I talked about his skill. It really pains me because I do play Dark States. But yeah, if you do dry check into Dark States Overtrigger, of course, he's going to be very, very scary. But then the consistency leaves something to be desired. And that is all for this video. Do let me know down in the comment section on what do you think of these Overtriggers. Do you agree with my ranking? Or maybe you have your own ranking? Do let me know down in the comment section, because I'm really interested in what you guys think. Do like and subscribe if you like this video. And remember to ring the bell notification icon so that you are notified whenever I post a new video. With that being said, I'll see you all on the field.